Is it recording?
Yep, it's recording.
All right, here we are on The Blind Man in Black. I am your host, Brian Snyder, and I'm here with a very special guest. She is an artist, she's a real estate agent, and we're going to learn a lot more about her. Tanya Seebach, welcome.
Hi, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you for, you know what, I'm going to put on my sunglasses because it
Sure.
hurts my eyes. I always don't remember to
Oh,
do
no.
this, so
Okay.
I'm going to do it now. So how are you holding together through this apocalypse?
I've been actually pretty good. Well, last year was rough in the middle of the
Hmm.
year, but luckily so my work was my saving grace because all I did was work and not focus on anything else. At the same time, um, I also didn't get a break. So I didn't really get to experience shelter in place. I mean, I was working, but I worked like I've never worked. I worked 90 to 110 hours a week without a break from,
Really?
yeah, and I actually did worse financially last year than I had ever done because there was just the market went so crazy and I was working a lot on the buyer side. And so that means there's like one property for like 20 to 60 buyers and only one winner. So it was just nonstop. But with that said, I'm happy that I had that reality. I mean, I could have used a little bit of a break to just take care of things, but I'm glad I had that reality because I really didn't get to focus on the pandemic and the anxiety that people were experiencing. I mean, I don't really get anxiety to begin with. It has to there has to be a major issue for me to experience that. But
Mhm.
for the most part, I was like, whatever, just work, work, work. That keeps me busy. So
I've been having panic attacks like almost on a weekly basis.
I
So,
heard that's
but
horrible,
did
Brian.
did my wife tell you?
No, I saw it in the interview. It's
Oh,
just like
okay.
heartbreaking. I've been getting anxiety when I think about your situation. I mean, I don't mean to bring that up, but I'm just like, you know this. I've been sending you emails about stuff like, hey, I found this little research thing.
Right, right. So, what was I going to say? So the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast is we met at my wife's birthday party, and I actually met all of her friends,
Yeah.
and I found you immensely present when talking with you, and I wanted to explore that. And plus, I know that you're an artist and you've traveled the world. You've been to Antarctica and
Yeah.
done some pretty amazing things. And so I wanted to understand you. And also, every time, my wife mentions you, I learned something different, like that you're a mortician and so on. So
Yeah.
I want to learn more about you. So what is your origins? Where did Tanya begin?
Well, my I'm half Brazilian, half Chilean,
Hmm.
raised in a half Chilean, half Japanese household.
Okay.
So my dad is Brazilian, and I actually look like the Brazilian side of my family. My
Hmm.
mom's Chilean. They met in Los Angeles. They were both, brand new from their country, and they didn't. My dad spoke English, but my mom was like learning English with me. And
Hmm.
then later on, when they got divorced, my mom married a guy from Japan who he's American, but he
Hmm.
was, Japanese. And so I was, I was raised in all sorts of cultures except for American culture. Like
And
my
how did
stepmother,
those, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, no, my stepmother was Peruvian, or one of my dad got married a bunch of times. So, you know, everyone in my family spoke a different language and we'd speak to each other in different languages. Um,
Have you
and
been able to maintain those languages?
yeah, except for Portuguese, I'm not so good at anymore. When I go back to Brazil, it'll take me a few days and then I get back into this, I get back into it. But yeah, I'm fluent in Spanish and I understand a lot of languages because I've lived in various places.
Yeah, my understanding is that once you grasp a second language, other languages are very easy to acquire,
Mm-hmm. Also
especially if
emotions.
at, at a young age.
Exactly. Also,
Yeah.
you experience different emotions when you have a different language going through your head, because there's certain emotions that exist in a certain language. And you can relate to that and the way they, like, for example, like Spanish is a very romantic language, but when I mean romantic, it's not that romantic. It's more like it's very passionate. Like the death is passionate, life is passionate, love is passionate, hatred is passionate, death is passionate. It's just so like, ah. And that's where I became a little bit more Americanized. And I'm like, I don't want that much passion in my life.
So you had an overloaded passion in
I
in
had
your
an overload.
childhood.
Yeah.
Was it draining?
Yeah, but I'm the type of person that I can handle a lot of stress.
Hmm.
And so I was able to, just deal with it. And yeah,
So
yeah.
so how did your parents influence you?
Um, well, they came to this country with the idea that America is the most wonderful country ever and that you can go anywhere you want. You can go, because in my parents' country, and there's the idea of social class, socioeconomic, social class, especially like manners, like please and thank you, and graciousness, and then they'll say make comments like, oh, they didn't say thank you, therefore they were a low class, and that was really
Hmm.
hard for me growing up um because I was just like, I don't think my friends think that way, and I don't think that way, but I get how you guys think that way, and you know, and as I got older, they also came. I didn't finish my. um, so that was something always stewing in the back of my mind. And then also they came with the idea that you come to this country and you can move in any direction you want. You can, if you get an education, you can go here, and if you you have a certain like way of being, you can get by, and there's opportunity. Not like in our country where if you're born a certain way with a certain last name, no one's going to give you the opportunity. And
Hmm.
I know now that that's not exactly true in this country because of what we just went through with understanding like what BLM and all of that stuff that I mean we've always known it, but to see how hard certain people have to work at getting to a certain level in life, and like it's just like, oh. But is it this country or is it this the human race? Like, is it human nature?
Hmm.
Because it's more hardcore in other countries, in my opinion, than it is here. Having been someone who's lived in a lot of different places, I feel like here, even though I might get like killed for saying this, but I feel like it's a little bit easier here,
Are you
just
talking
because
about like economic mobility?
economic mobility. Yeah,
Right. Right.
I feel like it's easier here. Maybe I know it's changed around the world, but we're talking about my perspective when I was a kid.
Right. And
I'm
how
very
did your parents still feel the same way as they spent more time living here?
uh, probably and probably not. You know, I give them the benefit of the doubt that they've changed in their own way. My parents they were not easy. They were, they're very foreign parents that they insult their kids all the time, and they definitely, we don't work on positive reinforcement, but
Mhm.
that actually really helped me because
The
I got,
insults?
oh yeah, yeah, for sure,
Really?
yeah, for sure, because it keeps you humble.
Hmm.
Like when I was younger and I started because I'm Latin, I started developing super fast. I'd have like one big boob and one small boob, and I got my period when I was 8 years old. And I I was like, was super hairy, and I had like a mustache and a unibrow, and my mom would be like, "Hey," they would just say things that were insulting, but also very, very sweet and not insulting, that it made me laugh at myself. In the Spanish culture, a lot of people say things like, oh, gordita, oh, flaca. They call each other, like, if you're fat, they call you fat. If
Hmm.
you're skinny, they call you skinny. If you're tall, if you're short, they call you short. If you're dark, they call you negra, or they call you dark. And I think that's kind of, as horrible as it would sound in American culture, I kind of think it's healthy because, I mean, to a point, because you just really kind of everyone loves you so much that, and you feel the love from your family and you feel the love from your friends who tease you about this, that you accept yourself. And we don't have that in this country. We have, like a lot of people are like, oh, don't, it's just, I feel like a lot of times I don't know, people don't accept themselves the way they are. And I'm talking about like my whole family, you
Hmm.
know. But I know
But no,
I'm
no, no.
being
I'm hearing it.
polite.
What I'm hearing is like, but it sounds like it's balanced out with love, because
Totally.
my father used to call me meathead and moron and all that, but it really wasn't balanced. It was just that was so. Um, it's what I'm hearing is that there was more of a balance of the insults with a lot of love.
Well, I'm not sure if it was balanced because there were times that it didn't feel balanced, but I think I think that you get a thick skin when you're raised in a foreign culture. You just do.
Hmm.
And you know, you just get a thick skin, and you work really hard. I don't know, you just go, okay, well, you know, then I'm going to work harder to not be that way, or you know, I'm
Hmm.
going to be hard, or I'm going to just I'm just going to own it. You know, I'm
Hmm.
this way, I'm going to own it.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's funny because my wife was gonna. She said, "Tell her that she's not very smart or very pretty," and I'm like, I'm not gonna say that. I'm not. I said it the first time before the interview. I'm like, I'm not gonna say it. There's no context to it, but it's kind of
That's a
funny now that you mention the insults, and I'm like, okay, I know
and
Rachel adores you, so
well, I
uh,
always got Rachel's humor because she's always said that to me in a joke,
mhm,
and I've always dished it back to her, as you can tell, like on social media. Like I
right,
have such a comfort. Everyone has such a comfort level with her. I mean, she's amazing, and everybody absolutely loves her.
yeah,
And but she's, you know, she like the other day when we were on social media, and she's like, I hate all of you, and we were like, okay, like nobody took her serious. And if she's serious one day, we would take her serious because she would tell us she's serious. But and she's probably serious at the moment, but it's a very lighthearted and, I don't know, snarky way of being that we've all in our little group of friends, you know, we all have, I don't know, I've always felt really, I think that's why I've always felt comfortable with those people, because I've always felt like I can dish it and they can dish it to me, and we can, you know, like all of us, we're comfortable with each other. I hope. I really hope, like, you know, on a family level.
mhm. We're going to talk about the tribe because Rachel refers to you as part of her tribe,
Yeah.
and but we'll get to that a little bit later. But so I want to go back to the beginning again a little bit more. What other influence did you have growing up? Did you have any mentors? Did you have any spiritual guidance? What?
Oh my God, mentors. I did later in life. So, all right, I guess I'll give you a little rundown on. So my family, Brazilian Chilean, they had a spirituality called Umbanda. It's a Brazilian voodoo based religion called
Mm-hmm.
Umbanda. And so I was raised in that religion, or I mean, I was raised in it from the time I was born until I was like 7 or 6. So, you know, and that really affected me in in a not a bad way. You know, as if someone was raised in like Christianity and they believed that Jesus was, you know, like the way.
Mm-hmm.
I believed that I was talking to the dead. You know, I just believed. I grew up thinking that, oh yeah, I talk to dead people, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in sessions, because my
Like the
dad was a
Sixth Sense,
medium. Oh yeah, different though, different. I wasn't.
right? Mm-hmm.
um, my dad was a medium, and they were, you know, they were into that, into like really hardcore spirituality. And then they would tell me things like, you know, don't tell your friends about it because they're going to think you're weird. And I was like, okay. So, you know, I never said anything to anyone,
Mm-hmm.
but like in the family. And as I got older, and then my parents dabbled in a lot of different things, always the occult. So it was like
Mm-hmm.
my dad got in from that. He got into Wicca, then he got into Rosicrucian. He gave me my first tarot deck when I was 12 years old. My mom wasn't into
What did
that
he give you?
tarot deck.
Okay. Okay.
And my mom, she wasn't into that, but she had her own like spirituality. She had her own like exploring. And, you know, I actually, believe it or not, pulled away from all that. Like I just kind of didn't want anything to do with it. It just seemed, I don't know. I wasn't so, I mean, I was into it when I was younger, when I was exploring, but as I got older, I was like, I'm not sure if I completely believe and agree with everything you guys are teaching me.
Hmm.
It was my own rebellion, which is funny because later on when I found the goth culture, they were actually into it and I already had left. I was like,
Did
I
they
was like,
go goth?
my parents?
Yeah.
No, no, I don't think so. I mean, goth is like a fashion.
Right.
I think that there's been a group of people throughout history that have been, um, you know, dark in a way, for lack of a better word, whether it's a lack of fear of darkness, or, an interest in certain poetry, spooky things, or I think that's been historical throughout history.
Hmm.
And so if you want, so yeah, my parents were really into that kind of stuff.
Now, when you said, this is not for me, how did they respond?
Well, they were exploring so many things. They were always super cool and open with me, and they never really judged me about stuff. I know that I had arguments with my mom about astrology growing up. Like I would be like, "Wait a minute, you can't tell me that a star that's 10,000 light years away, one that's 10 light years away, one that's, that's going to dictate my personality."
Mhm.
And later on, I was like, there's kind of something like accurate about. No, I don't want to believe in that.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
where's my logical brain? Yeah, but yeah, no, I've changed. I mean, I there's a lot of like things that I can't explain, and I have my own like spirituality, uh, but yeah. So
So you have your own spirituality. I mean, can you describe it if you feel
mm,
comfortable doing so?
I mean, I would feel comfortable if I could figure out how to articulate it. It's just, I do pray, which is odd. Well, it's not odd, but I do pray, but I always pray for other people.
Hmm.
It's not something that I pray for myself. I always pray, like, and it's just like I just randomly say God, and even though I can swear up and down that I'm agnostic, and and I act like a tough guy that I'm agnostic, I just always go back to this, like, you know please, dear God, help that person, or make them safe, or make sure my kids get safe. Like, it's always just, I don't like formally pray. I just say this thing in my head.
No,
Um,
I hear you. I mean, I
yeah.
have a similar thing. I'm not religious, but I sometimes talk to the great mystery
Mm,
and see if there's a response, or just to see what happens, and sometimes out of desperation.
I get
So,
that. I get that.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. No, out of desperation, there's been a few times for sure. Um, but yeah, so that all led me, the Umbanda and then the upbringing and all that. Um, that all kind of, you were asking about the mortuary, that all kind of led to that later
do
in
they ever
life.
practice Santeria?
No, it's similar. It's called Umbanda.
Right. All right. But
Santeria,
since you mentioned they went from one to another, I thought maybe they might explore that as well.
yeah, Santeria is more Spanish, and even though I'm Spanish, they just didn't explore that.
Mm,
And I think that involves like eggs, and I know that the Orishas are the same, or they're similar Orishas, which are the gods involved.
hmm.
I don't know a lot about Santeria, but I do know what I know about Umbanda came later on an academic level, like,
Hmm.
because as a kid, I was, we were just in it. We just always were a part of it.
Hmm.
But then it wasn't until I was like 20 something that I started wanting to learn about it on an academic level. Like, wait, what
What
was that?
was there any aspect of it or that you still hold on to now? Are you still there? I think we might have a little bit of an internet slowdown.
Oh, can you hear me? Oh, yeah, it's saying your internet is unstable. Shoot.
My internet?
No, mine.
Oh, okay. Um, yeah, it's okay. I can hear you now, but it may be fine. So, but just repeat the last thing that you said.
Oh, I
I
was
think I
just
asked
saying,
you if you were holding on to any of it right now.
nope,
Okay.
nothing.
Okay.
I mean, absolutely nothing of it, nothing. I mean,
Right.
I'll do my own little prayers sometime, but yeah, no, it's not my focus at all anymore in my life.
Okay.
So,
So you grew up in LA, right?
yeah, I'm from Hollywood and then later on North Hollywood. And um
I
I grew up
lived
in
all over there, so I know it very well.
oh, okay. So I grew up on Cahuenga between Sunset Boulevard and Santa Monica Boulevard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was there's a little village that still exists actually. Like it's like a row of houses and I grew up there. And then later on my parents moved to North Hollywood. You know, they were foreign, so they were, you know, they didn't speak English, or at least my mom didn't. My dad spoke some, but they were Latinos, like just trying to get by and figure out, you know, life in this country.
What did they do
And
for
they
a
had,
living?
well, my mom was a she started off as a nanny and then a maid,
Hmm.
and then and my dad, my biological dad, was a bus driver.
Okay.
And then my mom married a Japanese guy when I was like, I think 6 or 7. I think it was 7.
Hmm.
And and then later they met at the hospital because she was a nanny, then a maid, and then she became a nurse.
Hmm.
And then they met in the hospital, and they were just both like, just nothing. They weren't anything at the time. And then he went to Mexico to go to medical school,
Hmm.
and then they spoke Spanish to each other. And then he became a doctor when I was, I don't know, like 9 or 10, 9. So the idea of like watching my parents like better themselves and grow and all that, that was, you know, and then they started little by little, they would, you know, save their money, and then they bought real estate, and they built their life up through real estate, which is how I ended up getting into it, because I saw and witnessed what it did for my family.
Was it because Will Rogers said buy real estate because God isn't making more of it?
I never heard that, but
I think that I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something like that. He says, buy land because God's not making more of it.
oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good, I think I believe in it still. And I mean, as far as like, you know, having a roof over your head concept,
Hmm.
the investment part of it, that's a whole different thing. But I do, you know, I do believe in having a roof over your head
Hmm.
and owning that, so that no one can, you know, kick you out, and you're, you know, that's a whole different thing.
Right.
And it takes discipline and work to get there,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know.
So what
And the
was
big,
uh
yeah.
so what was it like so how did you find your way in life? What were your interests growing up? What were you into?
Oh my God. Well, I wanted to go to medical school. That was my number one ambition. Um, I studied mathematics, and biology in college. And you know, I was always a science and math person, but I was also an artist. And my mom actually would always say, "Oh, Tanya, she's an artist. Oh, Tanya, she's an artist."
Hmm.
You know, that was like everyone who knew me as an artist. Nobody even like had any like inkling that I was good at math, or
Hmm.
even though I wanted to be Indiana Jones. Like, I'm not joking. I really did. I wanted like
You wanted to be an archaeologist, kind
I
of, or an
wanted to be an
adventurous?
oh my God, yeah. I wanted to be
Yeah.
an archaeologist. I was in love with Indiana Jones, everything about Indiana. I was obsessed with Indiana Jones growing up. In fact, I find my books from when I was a kid, and I would write about Indiana Jones, and like I was just so obsessed with him, and you know, the idea of being an archaeologist. And
So what do you think that was about?
oh, I still love it. Like, oh yeah, that's still like, well, for one, adventure.
Uh-huh.
Two, anthropology, archaeology, artifacts. You know, there's a civilization, and like learn about them. And, you know, I just love that stuff. And then, of course, the adventure part of it. And I was, you know, it's just a fantasy.
Right.
But, and then as
Well,
I as I got older, I decided I would go to medical school, and I tried to pursue that. But then I was dating someone in high school. His name was Tom, and we started dating when we were 15 years old. Until okay, started dating when we were 15, and it was just a teenager relationship. Nothing,
Hmm.
just I broke up with him, and he broke up with. It was crazy back then. And then we broke up, and I dated this other guy who turned out to be like one of my dearest best friends, and I absolutely love this guy still. We're still good friends. And then and then and then I got back together with Tom briefly, and Tom died unexpectedly. He got hit by a truck.
Oh.
And I don't want to go into details on that one because it was really hard, but that sent me on a downward spiral where, being, being raised in this kind of, in contact with the dead, my dad in the occult, I never fit in anywhere. I never felt like I fit in growing up. And I would just hang out with like the alternative kids. Um, and then all of a sudden, like the person I was closest to dies, and it was just a horrible, horrible death. Um, I decided to just quit everything and follow my dream and his dream, because he had a dream of going to San Francisco. And at the time, the other guy that I had been seeing, his name's Jim. He had moved to California. We were gonna like, it's complicated, but he had moved. Was gonna go there, and anyway, yeah, but all of that kind of led me to the mortuary. And and a lot
Before
of
we get there, I want to ask you a question though. Do you think the medical school thing um, was that influenced by your stepfather?
no, no, not really, because my stepfather is an ER doctor, and he wasn't, in my opinion, he wasn't passionate about being about medicine.
Hmm.
I mean, he's really smart, he's good at it, but he never like brought it home. He never
Hmm.
talked about it at home. It was a genuine interest on my end. I have a big medical family. My mom, she came to this country, and then she became a nurse, and my cousin's a nurse in her country. My grandma was a nurse. We have a lot of science and art people on my mom's side.
Hmm.
And I wanted to be a neurologist because I've always been obsessed with the brain. I still am, like anytime I can read about it or listen to podcasts about it. So that's what I wanted to do, was neurology of some sort. It just
Hmm.
seemed fascinating to me. Um, so I don't know if you can hear, that's my dog snoring.
That's
Okay,
okay.
I don't know if you heard him.
It's
But
it, it's very organic. Go ahead. Let's go with it.
so and then, mortuary college, finally, when after Tom died, it just seemed like uh, it wasn't a lateral move, but it felt it at the time.
Hmm.
It involved, mortuary college was fascinating because you're not just learning like embalming, you're also learning about, burials and religion, and how to, how the religion like views the dead, and, what are the things you need to do for certain funerals. Um, and honestly, Brian, I would say that that probably made the biggest impact on me in life, because having been a mortician and having like started that career at the age of 22, because I graduated mortuary college, I got my degree, and then I worked at a mortuary. And having done that at such a young age, and listening to eulogy after eulogy after eulogy every day, I started to see that made such an impact on my life. I would see people that would have, one or two people show up to their funeral, and they would usually be heartbroken because they were heartbroken that they didn't feel more bad, or they were disappointed in them. And then I would see other people that would have 200 people show up at their funeral, and everybody's like in grief, and everybody's, just crying over this person. And then the eulogies, and you would feel like you wanted to cry. So either one, you would feel the sense of sadness for either side, because you're like, wow. And that gave me a real perspective on, how do I want to design my life so that I can live a good life where I'm good to people and genuinely, and and genuinely make people's lives better when they interact with me. I genuinely make people feel good about their day or who they are, or, you know, that career really, really made a huge impact on me. Huge impact.
Let me ask you this now. So, had you seen a dead body before you went to mortician school?
Only my ex-boyfriend who died.
Oh, so you were there. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
when you started working, and I apologize, I missed that.
That's okay. No,
Um,
that's a lot.
now, so when you were at school and you had to start actually practicing it, I mean, how was that experience?
Oh, it was terrible. I was like, do I really want to do this? It was like, oh, the smells, this is terrible. Like, do I really want to do this?
Right.
But 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 yeah, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad that I finished. And there was a lot of, you know, there's a lot of weird meditation that happens from listening to a eulogy. I'm sure Rachel relates to this because, you know, she's in the same field. And when you have a group of people who are just kind of meditating on certain person's life, it does something to you, you
Hmm.
know, like it really, it does affect you. And you for me, it made a huge impact on how I want to love people and how not to take people and moments for granted. I
Hmm.
mean, honestly, you know, I did removals, and going into a convalescent at such a young age all the time. I mean, I grew up in a convalescent because my mom and my grandma did that. So I grew up watching people, like, you know, diapers in a bed and being fed. So that was already a reality.
Hmm.
But to see going into a convalescent and you're there to do a removal, and then there's, you know, you're seeing all these old people who were like, wow, these people were once like young, hot, sexy, had a family. These people were like not any different from me, probably. Let's see if I'll turn my phone off. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
And
That's probably
and
my
here
wife.
they and here they are, like, alone, you know, sitting in a bed. And so that was a hard reality for me to understand, that life could end up that way, and how, you know, just not take people for granted, not take love for granted, not take the little petty things for granted. I mean, and when I say that, I really mean it. Like, I really, really, really mean it. I'm speaking so from the heart.
Mhm.
And I live my life this way, where I, you know, I think that, I mean, I was married for 17 years, and I'm still like, my ex-husband is an amazing guy. Like, I
Mhm.
still don't take him for granted. We had our issues, of course, but, you know, I think that because of that, I just, there was a lot of times where I was just like, no, it's not, this is not worth, you know, like ending like this. We can get through this, kind of a thing.
So, how long were you a mortician?
4 years.
Okay. Now, was there a time where a particular, person, or a death affected you in a certain way that was very
Yeah.
powerful and profound?
Yeah. There was a few, but there was definitely a few, but there was one that the day that I met my ex-husband, I did a removal of this woman. Her name was Sylvia. And I walked into the house, and the cops were there because it was, you know, cops would have to be there. I'm sure Rachel knows this, when there was like an unexpected death at the house. And I
Mm,
mean, it wasn't unexpected. She was sick and old.
right.
But anyway, they were married for 54 years. And this little old guy opens the door and he's like, yeah, come in. So my friend Catherine and I walked in, and we're waiting for the coroner to release the body. And as soon as the coroner like called the cops and said, yeah, you can take her, Catherine and I put her on the gurney. And then all of a sudden the guy broke down and started crying. And he was like 80 or 90 years old. And he just, and I was like, oh my God. Like, I could not cry. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, that was, and you know, I was very emotional because I was such a young, I was 22,
Mm,
23. I was actually 24. Yeah. And that was the same day that I met my ex-husband, because I went to get tea afterwards and I met him at a coffee shop in Alameda.
Now, that's a very interesting moment because I mean, obviously, I don't know if there was an immediate attraction or what happened, but I mean, you obviously were married, but was there a thought like as you were dating and then thinking about that experience of, um, I don't know if I want to go through that, like being with somebody for 50 years and then having to go through the pain of losing them?
Oh, I never, that never crossed my mind
Mhm.
because I don't think that way. I know that we're all going to go through some sort of pain, whether like there's no stopping it. And to think about what the future holds was not something that ever really crossed my mind. I think
Mhm.
I'm actually more aware of it now than I was back then. Like
Okay.
now I'm more like I'm a little more choosy and like, I don't want that because that's going to lead to this. And and I don't want that because, but back then I never, like, it wasn't like I was blind to it, but um, I definitely like went into things thinking that, like, well, who doesn't come to this world and suffer, and who doesn't come to this world and have loss, and you never know how we're going to end. And, like there was a lot of that, and I mean, I'm still kind of like that, but I'm just a little more choosy now because
Right.
I can be, and I have children. So,
So, I mean, what made you leave the um, the mortuary?
um, oh my God, do I want to say this on in the camera? Okay, I'll tell you.
Please do, please do. It's a safe space.
Well, okay, so Burning Man was not the answer, but taking a lot of LSD and by myself, living in a mortuary and having this awakening of like, why am I looking at death? Why am I looking at negative things? Why am I like, life is actually pretty beautiful. Life is pretty amazing. There's a lot of good things that happen in the world. And I don't want to see this. I don't want to see the end. I'm going to see the end eventually.
Hmm.
And so it was around that time that I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do, like, I felt like once my brain shifted, which it needed to,
Hmm.
I didn't want to try it again. I didn't want to do acid again. And I wanted to see life. I wanted to possibly have children. I wanted to, see, I think I was born an optimist. In fact, I know I was, like, I'm a natural optimist. Um, but my
With a
parents,
goth edge.
oh yeah. Yeah. And I'm still an optimistic, gothy kind of person. um, but yeah, I think I was always an optimist, and that made me more of an optimist because I was just like, well, why are we focusing on like this negativity when life is going to be over in a blink of an eye? It's going to be over. And we only had this one chance to see the universe and see and understand like the technology that comes from it, the beautiful, the amazing thinking that comes from it, all of these cool things that have happened. We get to like, and the saddest part was that we weren't going to, I mean, possibly not ever remember all this amazing stuff that we got to see in the world. So that's actually what made me change and get out of it. Plus, it didn't pay well, for living in the Bay Area. I was like, if I want to stay in the Bay Area, I need to think of something else. Like, if I want to like live in a city, how am I going to be able to support myself? Um, at the time, I got into art, and that's a
Hmm.
whole different story.
Let's talk about that. So, what type of art, and can you describe it for those that are listening?
Yeah. So, because I had foreign parents and they didn't come from money, I didn't know that there was such thing as a trust fund. Like I had no idea that that existed. And I'm really glad that I didn't because it gave me a lot of confidence because I would have friends that were like I had a friend that she bought a house in Mill Valley and she made candles. And I was like, wow, if she can buy a house and make candles, then I could probably make it as an artist. And then I met some other people that they were like putting like productions together, and I started doing like production stuff, and I was like, wow, like they obviously know something I don't know. Like they know how to monetize themselves. They know how to ask for I was like, if they can do it, then I can. Little did I know, I didn't know, I had no idea. I was just so stupid and so ignorant of my mentality, but I had no idea that there were people that got help from their families. I
Mhm.
really, really didn't know that. And I'm actually glad that I didn't, because it made me work extra hard. And I was like, when I kept failing and getting up and failing, getting up, and I'm like, okay, this is not going to make it living. Okay, this is not going to make it. All right, really? That's the amount of money that I can make doing that? And then finally I realized, working in interiors, interior design, decorative painting, like get a contractor's license, you know, all of that, that I was like, oh yeah, I can give good bids. And oh yeah, then, and I started learning people skills, and then I ran into my two mentors in life that really helped to shape me. Um, so that's how I got into art, because I didn't know that other people were being helped by families.
So describe your art, the type of art that you do.
Well, as a kid, I did portraits as a kid.
Mhm.
I did portraits, I did birds, I did a lot of realism. I didn't do a lot of abstract work, but I learned the art of abstract work in order to get to realism. I've always been a natural artist, and I was obsessed with the Renaissance, obsessed, obsessed, obsessed with the Renaissance. Still am. Flemish painters, anything classical, the classical arts. I
So
still
why
am.
were you obsessed with that?
Oh, I don't know, but obsessed to this day. I mean, I'm still like, when I have some time, I listen to a lecture, I obsess over a painting. Yeah, still obsessed. The
Is there
old
a
arts.
painting, one or an artist that you really gravitate to and try to
Probably
immerse?
Leonardo da Vinci.
Okay.
Yeah, like, yeah, my whole life obsessed with him. Um, but so, and I felt that realism was something that took a lot of discipline. You know, people say, oh, it's easy, but it's like, it's actually not. It's actually, to get it right, it's actually hard. Um, so realism was something, and anything handwork. Like, I loved textiles, I loved sewing, I loved making jewelry. I loved everything, 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 everything that required like handwork. I just absolutely loved it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, and then I figured out that I could monetize it and support, my family and support myself as a contractor. So I ended up getting my contractor's license and doing, bids for interiors, and it wasn't doing portrait work, but it was, I got to learn wood grain, marble, gold leaf. My great grandfather was a gilder in Chile.
Mhm.
So that's runs in the family. That's a trade from my family. And yeah, so I did that for many, many years.
So
And
describe some of the, I guess, memorable projects that you worked on and how they affected you.
um, well, geez, how do you know, I think with me, it's more of like a strategy on how to get somewhere. So I would do a lot of, this is going to sound awful, but I would do a lot of like, oh, this person has really short ceilings and my stuff's not going to photograph in it well. So I'm going to give them a normal bid. And then I'd walk into someone's house. I had like 10-foot ceilings, 12-foot ceilings. And I'd be like, oh, this is going to photograph awesome. Because I was at the very beginning of my career.
Mhm.
So I would be like, all right, here's a bid that's lower in order for me to get the job. And then I would take photos and like, and be able to have something that I could show to an interior designer. And then later on I started trying to be more strategic, and I would give bids like, okay, well, here's a bid to do the job. And then here's the cheaper version if you invite me to all the country club parties and big politician parties that you have. And they were like, okay, well, that's easy. And so that got me my foot in the door with a lot of like, politicians in Washington, D.C. And
Mhm.
that's actually what moved me up into that world, was basically giving discounts in order to be invited to their parties.
Is there any politicians that you'd be willing to share that
Yeah,
you worked
yeah, yeah,
on?
yeah. I worked, let's see, I worked first I worked at, not first, but of the big ones I did. I worked at the US Treasury building.
Hmm.
And then I did the gilding, which is a really historical, awesome thing. I left some time capsules for my kids when I'm dead, and hopefully they'll find these time capsules when they do their next restoration and contact my kids. I worked at the old executive building, in the defense wing, and then the harvest room. And then I worked with this woman named Seal at the White House, doing both some decorative gilding as well as these posters for the Easter egg roll for Easter. And I met Laura Bush. I worked for mostly Republicans back
Hmm.
then, because it was Republican.
Right.
And I worked at Trump Tower in New York City
Did you meet
for,
him?
no, I never really met any of these people. I saw them
Mm.
from a distance. I did meet Laura Bush. I do have a letter from George Bush saying, thanks for your work, but it's a generic letter, like probably printed on a machine.
Right, right.
Um, and then after that, I went to the Middle East and I worked in some palaces in the Middle East. And that was awesome. I
So
really,
what was that like?
oh my God, it was so good. So good. Everyone I was with hated it, and I loved every moment of it.
Hmm.
I loved every moment of it. Like,
What did you love about it?
oh, it was kind of, it was amazing and terrible and good and crazy and weird. And, just you're in a different culture,
Hmm.
we're learning about it and seeing it. I knew it was going to be temporary, and the weather was kind of awful. The weather was terrible. The lifestyle was horrible. I'm, definitely beyond a second class citizen, below a second class citizen, but that doesn't bother me. It doesn't even slightly bother me. I just,
I'm sorry. What was that? Say that
a
one more time.
second class citizen.
Uh-huh.
I was below a second class citizen being female in those countries, but that
Right.
stuff doesn't even slightly bother me at all.
Mm.
Like, it doesn't, like, I'm not going to change it. So why am I going to be upset over it? They'll
Hmm.
change in time, give them 200 years, give them 100 years, give them 60 years. They'll change, but I'm not going to make myself miserable over it,
Hmm.
you know.
So what were some of the things that you saw while you were working there? And I also, before we get into that, I want to understand what drives your artwork. Like, what are you trying to, showcase and accomplish? What is it that you're trying to express?
Um, I'm not sure if you know, I would say one of my favorite arts is the Catholic art. Like, I love, 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 love Catholic art, religious art, sacred art. In fact, I've thought about starting a sacred art society in San Francisco or the Bay Area that incorporates all sorts of sacred art. Although I'm not religious or super spiritual, I love what it, I know all the bad that's come with it. I know that, like, everything has good and bad. But on the shallow end of it, on the very shallow end of it, I just liked the beauty of it. I love the handwork, the precision, the way it captured emotion. I love Caravaggio's work. How he did a chiaroscuro, and when you see a real Caravaggio in real life, you see the warmth in his shadows, which is like not textbook. And
Mm.
how is it that this work like makes you feel an emotion? Like, I was always, I think for me, and even the ceilings I did, it was always about capturing an emotion. Like, what kind of emotion does this, I don't know, just, I love, love, love that. For me, it was
So,
very like
so you're
personal.
in essence, you're what I'm hearing is that if the artwork just not only captures the emotion of the work itself, but gives the person viewing it that's a similar emotion and invokes that emotion. That's what you're
Exactly,
trying to accomplish.
exactly, exactly. Like, when I first went to the Vatican and St. Paul's, or is it St. Peter's Basilica? I mean, I was just like, I got this overwhelming feeling of like, oh my God. And it wasn't the religious part of it. It was like somebody put a million mosaics on this. Somebody
Right.
cut up, like, it was that, like, it's more of a technical, like, in awe. And that
Especially
person,
the Sistine Chapel.
oh
I'm
my God, I mean, yeah, all of that, like just the way there was no cameras, there was no photographs, and they were able to capture that. They were able to capture realism. How did they do it? That's the kind of stuff that really moves me in art. And I believe me, I love every art. I love everything. I'm one of those, I think because I'm an artist, I like everything. If
mm.
you do scribble scrabble, I'm going to find something awesome about it. Like I really genuinely love so much art out there.
A friend of mine, he he and I, we went to New York and we went to the Metropolitan Museum. And I don't remember, I wasn't with him, but he was looking at some piece of artwork, and it was just like, I think it was just like I don't remember exactly, but it was like a white canvas with like three lines on it or something. And he was looking at it. He's like, I could have done that. And
Yeah.
then this person next to him went, well, you didn't.
Yeah. And that's true. Like I look at Rothko's work, and that's one of the most expensive works that are traded in Sotheby's and Christie's. And when you see it, you're like, I could have done that. But when you see one in real life, you're like, oh, I get it. I
Right.
get it. I mean, maybe I don't get it. $98 million get it,
Yeah.
but I get why it's amazing. Because when you see it in real life, you go, I don't know how he did this, and I don't know how he layered the paint, and I don't know how he got that opacity, and I don't know how he, and it really makes you think. And that's the beauty of a lot of conceptual modern art, which I also love. I love a lot of conceptual modern art. Um, but do I feel like doing it? No, I don't feel like doing it. It doesn't come to me naturally, but I do love it to see it in other people, and I love the story and the narrative behind it. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean the power of the what visual art can do, the power to create change in somebody's spirit is amazing. And I mean I've experienced. I mean I loved when I was in theater. I loved watching Robert Wilson's work, um, because of the images that he created on stage. They were just beautiful. I met him, and he that experience was not the best, but
Oh,
I mean, yeah, he was very kind to me, but he just said something to somebody he was working with that he was just kind of was abusive, and I didn't
wow.
appreciate that, and so I kind of lost respect because of that. And I mean, I don't know what the context was, or what if there was something that was going on between them or whatever, but it was just an odd kind of awkward moment to be, um, you know, in rehearsal and hear him talk like that to somebody, and it really made me sad. But I
You
digress.
you actually
Anyway,
Yeah,
go ahead.
you actually do work in a medium that I most admire, which is acting. That was your medium, or one of your mediums. I know you're a writer also,
Mhm.
but I mean, I was exposed to actors about, I don't know, 7 years ago intensely, and I was just like blown away by now that medium is amazing. Something that I'm not very good at.
Yeah, I mean I did it because I did want to be who I was born as. I wanted to be something different, and I enjoyed the escapism of it. And then through that, I learned to enjoy the process of creation. And actually, the rehearsal process was actually my favorite aspect of it. Not so The show was great, the performance was great, but the rehearsal process, the discovery was so beautiful. And I can imagine, being a visual artist, the discovery in the moment must have been amazing as well, to
Oh
find that.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, big time. Oh
So
yeah.
talk
I
about
mean,
that.
I felt it was a philosophy that I kind of developed, and I mean, I still think that way. There's a philosophy that I developed even in my own artwork. I know it sounds very like weird, but for example, the control of the brush, like you push the brush, and if you just go in aggressive, it's going to give you a very aggressive, sloppy line. And that's kind of how interacting with people is. If you push your brush into someone in life, or you go in heavy, or you muddy it, by, how do you do a good composition where, that's pleasing and nice, you feel good about, or it's pleasing. It's the same thing with personality, and how heavy-handed you are, how light-handed you are, the pressure of the brush, I even see people as in colors, like, um, you know, well, this kind of personality complements this personality, and that person is this and that. But if you mix and you get too, I don't know, it's so hard to explain, but there's so many times where I get a lot of like my basic philosophy from what I learn in my own like artwork and things I've developed in the past, you know, just and there's a narrative in my head that happens as I'm doing the work, that it can explain an interaction, or can explain a path of life, or explain a goal, how to achieve this, how to finish it, how to complete it, when do you know you're done, that kind of a thing. There's a lot of philosophy that I've gathered my own personal like life from just doing a series of works.
Let me ask you this. There's a quote, and I don't remember who said it, but it's basically a work of art is never finished. It's just abandoned. Do you feel that way?
No, not for mine.
Mm-hmm.
Not for mine. But I can see that in sometimes. I think it depends on the style, the medium. Sometimes you just go, okay, I need to stop. Like a relationship, like, all right, this isn't working, or you know what, this is completed, we're done, like I'm finished. And then sometimes you're like, no, I'm going to make this work until it's perfect and until the end, kind of a thing.
Is there a piece of art that you started many, many years ago that you're still working on?
Not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Not anymore, no. But there is a series of portraits that I have a plan to work on in the future and get and complete it. And that's going to be basically a lot of my friends, people that have, meant a lot to me. And some of them will have animal characteristics, like how I see them. I want to do a lot of photorealism mixed with some abstract work. Some days I develop it and some days I don't. Sometimes I just don't have the time. But that's going to be changing in the next few years, where I'm going to make some more time. My kids are 19, so I've been, trying to focus on them, and I will always be focusing on them, but there's going to be a point where I also don't want to over focus on them, because if I over focus on them, then, feel smothered.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So let's go back to the palaces. What did you see there? What was the beautiful and the horrific?
well, the beautiful was the architecture, the culture that I didn't understand me, but it was still beautiful in its own way. The horrific, very horrific was the indentured servants, which I did actually make a post about it like 10 years ago. And the idea that there's more slavery in the world than there ever has been in the history of mankind.
Mm-hmm.
And to witness that and to see it was really hardcore. It was like, it really affected all of us, everybody that was on the job site.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like the idea that we could go into a job site and have our passports and be able to leave because of who we were. And then these other people, they couldn't, they were stuck there because of their passports. And that was just like, wow, that's crazy. Like, yeah, it was a lot. That was like the really horrific part of it. And little by little, those countries are working on themselves, and it's not just them working on themselves. It's politics and the UN, and there's a lot of things that are working to change those cultures, because they're hardcore, and it's pretty messed up what's happening over there.
Mm-hmm. So, uh, what are some of the projects that we can see now that you've worked on? I know there was that tower that you created relatively recently.
Oh yeah, that was yeah, I mean that wasn't really my style. That was, I mean it was cool. I loved the project, but it wasn't, I'm much more of a small worker, like working in detail.
Hmm.
Um and luckily I was able to turn that into a lot of detail in my own way because I would have been bored out of my mind if I wouldn't have.
Hmm.
That was someone else's project, and I ended up like working on it, and it was really cool to collaborate. But you know, in the future, if I ever work on like one of those pieces again, I would like a lot more detail, because then I
Okay.
think I would feel much more like accomplished.
So what is it? Is it about the detail that is critical
I don't
in your
know.
work?
I don't know. I really don't. Like, it's just my brain. Like, I love detail. I love, yeah, I love like thinking something through the detail. It's what I pay attention to when I'm looking at artwork.
Hmm.
It's what moves me is detail. You know, and I think it moves a lot of people when you're like, oh my God, look at this. And oh my God, look at this little thing. And oh my
Hmm.
God, look at that. Like, it's always the little details that
Hmm.
I think capture capture us. That was a great project, but it was a hard project, and it was a very hard project. But yeah, I mean, other projects to talk about would be, you know, some of the ceilings I worked on, you know, some portrait stuff that I've been working on.
Besides the government buildings that you worked on, what are some places that people can go and look and view your artwork?
Geez, government buildings, really. Well, I mean, I have all sorts of like murals in the city, and but they're all private collections.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Everything's
So they would
private.
have to basically break and enter into somebody's home
Yeah,
and okay. Okay.
yeah, and yeah,
Is
pretty
there any
much.
addresses that you'd like to give out so that our listeners and viewers can break and enter?
Well, so that comes with my mentor.
Yeah.
My mentor is this guy named Fuad Sahori and his family, Mary Sahori, and they're Palestinian. They're
Hmm.
Christian Palestinians. And he really took me under his wing and helped me as far as like he didn't open any opportunities for me, but he gave me like the tools on what it took to catch my own fish, kind of a concept. Um, and then there was another guy that was from Jordan, and his name's Daniel Nazi. And when I moved to Washington, D.C., so before that, I was living in San Francisco and, you know, going to Burning Man, and I just quit the mortuary, and I was kind of lost in what I wanted to do. And I had long dreadlocks, and I was hanging out with, you know, in the Death Guild, goth scene, you know, punk rockers, you name it, like just the whole subculture. There was another part of me that wanted to really, you know, wanted to make it in life. It was a time that I started to realize, and this was like in my late 30s, I think, that I started to realize, wait a minute, there's a difference between being fucked up and an eccentric.
Hmm.
And I can't tell right now the difference, like because they all are super cool and we're young, and but you know what? I don't want to be a fuck up. I want to be an eccentric. So
Hmm.
how do I design my life where I don't turn into a fuck up and I don't
Hmm.
end up, you know, depending on a system and angry? Because if I end up depending on something, I'm going to be angry with life. I'm going to be angry at myself, and I don't want to take that path. So, and of course I was a fuck up, but I chose that I didn't want to be that. Like, so when I met Daniel, I showed up at his house, and he was this guy from Jordan. I had just moved to Washington D.C., just had my kids. They were like a year old, and I really admired him. He was just this beautiful, elegant man, and his beautiful wife, and they had this beautiful home. And I was just like, I absolutely love these people. They're so hospitable, so warm, so amazing. And after I started working for them, I said, "Can you do me a favor?" Like I felt more comfortable with him, of course. And I was like, "Can you do me a favor?" And he was like, "Yeah." I said, "Can you criticize me? But like, I mean, can you really criticize me? Like, can you rip me apart and tell me what I'm doing wrong in life?" And he's like, no, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, no, 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 I really do. I really want you to. Like, I want you to tell me your honest impression of when you met me, what I look like, my body language, my body posture, my hand movement, my head movement, everything. Like, and he's like, are you sure? And I said, yes, rip me apart. Just do it. Go for it. And he did. He did. He really did.
What did he say?
Oh my God. He's, well, for many things, but he said, when you came to my house, you were wearing black and you look like you were going to go to a ball. Of course, he's Jordanian, Middle Eastern. She doesn't know what goth is, right?
Right.
So he's like, you look like you were going to a ball. And then you laugh too loud. And then you touch your hair too much. And then you do this. And your body language is too big. And you blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Now,
Because nobody else will tell you this stuff. Everybody tells you what you want to hear.
Except your parents, because now I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like you had a need to be insulted.
I don't really have a need to be insulted at all.
No, but what I mean is in a loving way, like you were talking about your parents and your family in the beginning. It reminded me of that, and that's why I said it.
Yeah. No, I totally understand what you're saying. The few times that I've had needed personal development and change, it's come from that. Mm-hmm. It's coming from having like been able to like just put my ego away and understand that, like I'm not perfect and I want someone to tell me how it is. And because I know that I want to go from point A to point B, and how do I get there? And if I'm doing it wrong, but I admire that person who's already done that, then I need to ask that person their opinion. And I didn't take everything he said to heart. Like I was like, actually in my head, I was like, yeah, I think he's wrong about this. And I think he's probably right about that, but I think he's wrong about, but as time went on and I started working with clients and customers and where I wanted to go in my life, then I started to take that, all of what advice he gave into consideration.
Now, when you were asking for guidance, I thought you were going to say in your art, critiquing your art, but you wanted your whole being to be analyzed to some degree.
Correct, because I have known so many amazing artists that just they can just barely get by and sell their work. Mm-hmm. So many amazing, but sometimes they can't because it's their body language, it's their business skills, it's these other things that stop them, and that's what I realized. Like I knew that I was always confident in my artwork, and I still am. I'm super confident, like super confident in my artwork, and my skills and my abilities. But I knew that if I stayed the way I was, in order to get to the next level, I was going to have to conform until I get there, and then I could just do whatever I wanted. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. I was able to conform and get my foot in the door. And then later on, I mean, these guys were super proud to invite their artist friend to their parties who was a little eccentric and a little weird. Like they loved it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So let's talk about, you said you have two sons. What was that like, raising them? And we didn't even talk, we got to get into Burning Man too. So you have all these different worlds that you're moving in between. How were you able to manage, doing your art and traveling and Burning Man and everything?
Oh, my poor kids. I mean, they just, they were troopers. They came along with me, and my ex-husband was also he played a huge role in helping me get to where I was at. And we helped each other. Like I helped him, and I have to, honor him for the things that he did for me, which is he's a great dad, and he was there for the kids. And I would go to work and, work on my art career, and he stayed with the kids. And so he helped a lot in that. We moved to France when the boys were 4 years old, and we lived there for a year so that I could do an apprenticeship with a master painter.
Oh, wow.
Was an adventure. It was really, really fun. We were really, really struggling bad. Like but I'm a bit of a risk taker, so we pushed it till the very edge. And that takes a supportive partner to go along with, with what I needed, with what I wanted at the time. And he benefited too, because he got to live in France, and we had a really fun time, and we got to backpack through England. So yeah.
Let's talk about Burning Man. So, how did you get involved in that and Death Guild? And explain what Death Guild is for those listening and watching.
So Death Guild was and is still a goth club in San Francisco. And David King, I was and still am really good friends with David. And
He's the owner of Death Guild, correct?
yeah.
Yeah.
And also he started Thunderdome. So I mean we collaborated, I should say. He so what happened was I told him about Burning Man, and he had heard about it. And so he was like, yeah, I'd like to go to that. And I was like, well, I'm going to be leaving on so-and-so date. If you want, I can give you a ride. And he was like, he didn't even know what it was at the time. I had gone the year before.
What year was this?
That was 97.
Okay.
And I had gone in 96. So I was like, I can give you a ride. And he was like, I already have a ride. If you want, we can all go together. And there was this girl named Jamie who recently got back in touch with, and she's actually in real estate, which is so funny. So it was this girl, Jamie, Michelle, David, and myself. And we drove up and we camped. I didn't camp with them because I was staying with a friend of mine. And at one point we were walking in the desert and he goes, I could see Mad Max. I could see Thunderdome out here. And I was like, Thunderdome? Like, you mean Mad Max's Thunderdome? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh. I go, well, when we get back to the Bay Area, maybe we should get organized and start do this project this Thunderdome project. And he was like, okay. So then we got back and we met Kurt out there. So we got back and I called him and I was like, hey, you remember when we were in the desert and you wanted to do that Thunderdome idea? And he was like, yeah. I said, you want to still do it? He was like, yeah. He was like, I'm going to be calling a meeting. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. So that's when I started to meet people. I hadn't really known anybody in the scene, because before that I was just a mortician that would go to the goth clubs with my pager, waiting for someone to be removed with my van. And I would hang out by myself, only knowing the doorman. I knew, David King and Matthew Noble and Aaron Nasberg. Like, I just knew a few doormen, but nobody. So I started meeting people, and then it was just a collaboration of a bunch of us that got together and put this project together. It was really freaking cool. Little did we know at the time that it was going to turn into what it is now.
Now, what does Burning Man mean to you, especially when it started and where it has evolved?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to give you my analogy of what I think Burning Man is.
Okay.
So Burning Man to me is like having a child. So when you first have your child, you go, oh my God, everybody, look at my kid, look at my kid, look at my kid, and my baby, look at my baby. My baby's the cutest thing ever. It is so cute. Look at my baby. Can't you? And you're like sick and tired of looking at the baby. You're like, look at the baby. Look. And then the baby gets, turns 2 and 3, and you're like, oh my God, my kid, look at my kid. It's amazing, right? Mm-hmm. Then the kid turns 5 and you're like, oh, my kid's so cute. That's still great. Mm-hmm. Then the kid turns 13 and you're like, oh, my kid is not turning out the way I want it to. Like, changing. It's not what I thought it was going to be. And I'm sick and tired of my kid, and it's yelling at me. And it's like, and now I want to just quit. I want to quit being a parent because my kid's a jerk. And then, and then the kid turns 19, 20, and you're like, you know what? I love my kid, and it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, but you know what? It turned out fine. It changed. Right. It's not what it turned into, but it's fine. So that's what the playa has been for me. It's like, I went through this, like, oh my God, it was so amazing, mind blown. Oh, it's the most amazing thing ever. and you meet like-minded people, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh God, I hate that place. Oh, I don't want to go back, but I'm going to go because I'm committed
Mhm.
and I need to go and I'm committed. And then all of a sudden now I'm like, oh, it's changing people's lives still. So, I mean, the dopamines don't spike on the playa anymore, but I see so many people that it's changed their lives and people that love it. And I'm like, okay, it's still working. That's awesome. Even though I don't feel it, doesn't mean it magic's not there anymore. It's still there.
But what is it? What is it? The essence of it. What does it mean to you? Like, I understand the evolution, but what does
Mhm.
it mean to you as a concept and idea and as a place?
Oh, for me, it's about the people. I know everybody says that it's the art, and yeah, it's the art partly, but it's the art. Like, but honestly, it's the people. It's the community I've formed. It's the friendships that have become family. Like it's all of the memories that we have formed out there. Um, you know, the good and the bad, because it's not always been good. It's the good and the bad, and
I've heard.
yeah, and it's a very extreme place. It's very, very extreme. So, but there's just something really beautiful about it. I love the desert. I love the art. I love how it, I mean, even though I don't like, some people, they kind of, they seem to change temporarily, or maybe they don't change the way I would have changed, or they don't have the same personality I have. I don't know. I still think that they get something out of it. And, my existence and my way of viewing the world is not the only one. So I don't know. It's just such a special place, I think.
Yeah, I've Rachel talks about it all the time and how much it meant to her and the beauty and insanity and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. The insanity. Yeah. I have so many memories. I have so many memories of Rachel, all of those people, all of Thunderdome. And then, the group that I'm with now, which is Five Ton Crane. And then we've kind of changed into Frozen Oasis. And it's hard to,
Does Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg stop by?
I don't even know if they go. I'm guessing they go,
I hear
but I
they
don't know if
fly
they go.
in and yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sure they do.
Yeah,
And, they'll get something out of it. Maybe it's
right.
not the same kind of thing out of it, but I'm sure they have amazing time.
I
Um,
bet. Yeah.
but yeah, I've like, all of all of Thunderdome, and just they're such great people. I mean, they've really like turned into my family. And then, with a Frozen Oasis and Five Ton Crane, they've also turned into my family too. It's just been you know, such a good group of people.
So uh, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. So you're in real estate. How is that
Mhm.
going?
Good, good. It's helped me exercise my left brain. It's also it's also creative, and there's a lot of like critical thinking that goes into it, which I enjoy. It's not everybody makes it financially in real estate. A lot of people actually quit.
Hmm.
It's not for the weak. It's not for the faint of heart at all.
Hmm.
I enjoy it, and it takes a long time to be successful at it. But my ultimate goal is to be an investor. I haven't gotten there yet, but my ultimate goal is to be able to buy just a few properties that will afford me to um, either travel or work on something, or not to sound like a weirdo, but one of the concepts that I tell my kids, I'm like the house I have, I'm like, guys, if ever in the future when I'm old, if like let's say I get Alzheimer's, or let's say I need convalesce, like don't ever sell don't ever sell a property to, like, don't sell your asset to pay off a liability. Instead, use the asset in order to support the liability. But then once I'm gone, then you keep the asset. So, and so that's one of the other things. I'm like, I know that sounds so weird and such a stupid thing to say, but that's kind of like my forward thinking that came from having been a mortician, of like, I don't want to put my kids out where they're like, oh my God, now we have to support my mom. and she's old, and I mean, I hope I never get to that point. I hope that I'm just, I try to keep super healthy in my life. That I don't, but you never know. I also want to travel. Like, I want to do a lot of travel in the future. And if I could have something that's giving me even like $1,500 a month, that would be nice to have that, because I don't have that luxury right now.
Speaking of traveling, Antarctica, I want to hear about that experience.
Oh my God. So my dream, okay, so I think I'm going to tell you first that one of the best trips I've taken was I took my 13-year-old twin boys to the Amazon, and we did backpacking from the Amazon to Ushuaia
Hmm.
through the Andes, and we went to Galapagos. At the time, Ian and I were splitting up, and I told myself that I was going to do this, but I didn't know how I was going to do it, because I was like, I don't have the money. I'm not making the money. Like, I hadn't been in my career. It's like, I just know that I want to do this.
Hmm.
So I was able to save up the money to do it by the time it happened. And I don't know if you know this, but my father, my Brazilian side of the family, is from the Amazon.
Hmm.
So they arrived there in the 1700s, and they left in 1958. My dad was born in the Amazon in Manaus, a city
Hmm.
called Manaus. So for me, it was important that I wanted to see what they lived like.
Hmm.
And so we were there, and it was just like, everything wants to kill you in the Amazon, like everything.
Hmm.
Mosquitoes, the trees, the anacondas, I mean, you name it. It was so dangerous.
Hmm.
But I'm glad that we went.
Did you see an
And
anaconda?
oh yeah, we saw one. Um, yeah, we saw all sorts of crazy things. A piranha jumped in our like a canoe one night. It was super dark. Like, it was all the lights were turned off, and this piranha jumps on my son's lap.
Oh
And
no.
yeah, and he stands up, and he was 13 in front of me, and I grabbed him and both of them, and I yanked them down, and they were kicking and screaming, and then they put the flashlight on, and then these two guys like took the piranha and away. And I was like, oh my God, if we tip this boat over, we're gonna die. Um, so anyways, so the goal in that trip was I wanted to go see Ushuaia, which is the furthest tip close to Antarctica, because I had heard that all the trips from the United States or everywhere, they're super expensive. But I heard that if you go to Ushuaia, or you can get a Russian cargo ship to take you, and it's less expensive to get to Antarctica. So anyway, made it to Ushuaia, looked for trips. I didn't find anything that was a good bargain, but eventually I did. I kept in touch with these people, and then I went in 2019, and that was a dream come true, because I had been obsessed with Antarctica for about 6 years. And my biggest fear was crossing Drake's Passage, because I knew how dangerous Drake's Passage was. And I knew that, that I had so much anxiety, and it's a 2-day crossing, and the swells, I was told that the swells can be 25-foot tall, but it turns out the first storm we hit was 35-foot swells. And the second storm we hit coming back was 55-foot swells.
Oh,
Yeah. So
intense.
it was crazy. Yeah. So it took us 3 days to go and 3 days to come back, and it was supposed to be 2 days. So
Wow. That's
yeah.
really intense. So what was the experience like of seeing Antarctica, and what did that do to your optic nerve and retina?
Oh my God. Well, I went because I wanted to hear. Okay, totally forgot about this, but this is the truth. My goal was to see, or to experience, the first night. Oopsie daisy. Hold on. The first night that I camped there, I wanted to listen to Tchaikovsky's Hymn of Cherubim, because to me, that song was one of the most beautiful songs I had ever heard. And and so I had prepared and prepared and prepared to hear the song the first morning that I woke up. And I actually have some photos of like what I saw, and then I had my phone and my headphones and all that. And so that was like one of the most like amazing experiences that I got to experience.
How
And
did you feel when you were there? What were the emotions that you were
Oh my God.
experiencing?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Like so amazing. The first night, okay, the first night sleeping there, because we didn't have tent. We didn't have a
Mhm.
tent. We just, you carry, but the first night, it- we experienced so many avalanches happening around us. I was super scared. I was like, oh my God, we're gonna die. And then the guys were like, later on, I finally woke one up and he was like, no, you're not gonna die. It's fine. Like we know that the avalanches are not gonna come this way.
Mhm.
But I swear it was like such a long story. I'm not gonna like bore you with the details, but that night, finally, after I calmed down and I got into I had 3 sleeping bags. Once you get into your sleeping bags and you zip, 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 and I put the hood on and you pull it. I looked at the stars and it cleared up, which is unusual,
Mhm.
and I could see into the nucleus of the Milky Way, which was pretty amazing. Like, we in the northern hemisphere we look at the arm of the Milky Way, but
Mhm.
in the southern hemisphere you look into the nucleus of the Milky Way.
Hmm.
So that was an amazing experience. And then listening to that song, waking up in the morning and listening to that song when the sun came up, it was beautiful.
I can imagine it was very spiritual. You
Yeah,
feel connected to
yeah,
the
yeah. And I didn't know
universe.
yeah, and Tchaikovsky, you always think of his work as very, like almost like Rococo. It's like a little bit bubblegum, whereas like the Hymn of Cherubim is just so like deep and dark. It's just a beautiful song.
So, I mean,
So,
there's a theme of darkness, and so I mean, I hear what kind of where it started, but let's talk about, is there a moment in your life that you feel like you've loved beyond your fears?
yeah, my kids, because I didn't want to have kids. I was super scared of being a mom, and so then when I found out I was pregnant, I was super super scared. But I had already fallen in love with the idea and the idea of having kids. That I just and I remember when I got pregnant, when I found out that I was pregnant, I called Kevy. You know Kevy, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I called Kevy, and Kevy was so excited about being a mom that she was like, "Oh my god, oh my god!" I started to cry on the phone with
Mhm.
her, and and that was like that really like her excitement kind of changed everything for me. And anyway, yeah, so loving beyond my fears, like that was a huge fear of mine, and I'm so glad that I didn't listen to my fears. I'm
What were you
so
afraid of?
glad. Oh, it's just it's in a way it's selfishness,
Hmm.
of like well, I'm an artist and I want to live an artistic lifestyle and I want to do what I want and I want to, and I was just like, I can't picture myself having kids and I can't picture myself like sacrificing the things I want to do for a kid. But then that all changed as soon as I got into the headspace of, being a mom and then having them. And, there's a lot that you're like, oh, everything else, all that stuff, that's nothing. Like that comes second compared to like this little cute little person that you get one shot at
Hmm.
to get it, to do the best job you can. And of course, you're going to end up messing them up by accident anyway, and you're going to end up doing things that you didn't know that were bad because it's kind of like you're down with if you do and you're down if you don't. Like that you get a kid who screams all the time, and then you tell them to stop. Well, they're not going to remember the fact that they screamed all the time. They're going to remember the fact that you told them to stop.
Hmm.
That kind of a thing. So, yeah, loving beyond my fears, I would say, with my kids.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Before we close, is there anything like a website or anything that those that are listening and watching can visit to see your work?
Um, I mean, I have a very generic website in art called tanyathegilder.com.
Hmm.
It's not even developed, it's just a Wix site. And it has some of my
Okay.
work. It's not even developed. Back in the day, I had a professional website,
Okay.
but now I don't. Like, yeah. I think, let me see here. I'm looking. Okay. Yeah, no, that's it. Just Tanya the Gilder. I mean, Facebook has some of my work on it. And I'm always like creating things. I'm always, always doing something. I mean, not so much recently, but yeah, I'm being involved with this group, Five Ton Crane or Frozen Oasis. It gives me a creative outlet to do stuff. It's
What's the
not
name of it again?
Five Ton Crane.
Okay.
5 Ton Crane.
Do me a favor, email me the website that you just mentioned and that so that I can put it in the show description if those that are interested can,
Yeah, I
research
mean,
it.
5 Ton Crane, I don't know if, I mean, my work's not really in there. I mean, part of my work's in there, but I would
Mhm.
say I'll just send you mine and then, yeah, I'll just send you mine. And I can send you that one too.
Great.
Maybe.
Well, Tanya, thank you so much for sharing what is alive within you, and deeply
Thank you.
grateful for your time and your vulnerability. And thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I would love to come up one of these days. I've been telling Rachel that forever.
Yeah, yeah, please do. Just yeah, let's continue the conversation and we'll work something out. And I know she would really love to see you, and I'd love to be within your presence as well. So let's
Okay.
definitely make plans soon for sure.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Have a lovely evening. And this was The Blind Man in Black. I'm your host, Brian Snyder. You can visit me at the blindmaninblack.com, YouTube channel, and Apple Podcasts. Now we're going to have the awkward ending that we always have. So
Okay.
here we go. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.